Hi, I'm Naisha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Hello, everybody. Welcome again to You're watching For the Greater Good with Evelyn Richardson. And I have a special guest today, Dr. Larry Deutsch. He is a city councilman. He is representing the Working Families Party, and I'm excited to have him here today to share some background and information with us about being a city council person. I'm stuttering over my words today, so bear with me.
I do that too.
So first, Dr. Deutsch, can you please just share with us a little bit about your background? Where do you live? Where did you come from? And how did you end up here in Hartford, if you weren't born here?
Well, it's true. I'm an immigrant like some people, but only from New York City, I would say. That's where I grew up, and that's where I, after school, became a high school teacher and actually worked in early education for a while and went to medical school. And it's a long history, I guess, but basically when you go through some of that, then you settle in a city that you think there's a need for your skills, and you join the community in trying to improve things, which I hope is why people go into medical care.
Teacher.
Since then,
which grades did you teach?
Mostly high school, but then being a substitute, you wound up in middle school, and sometimes I also did substitution in daycare center in the projects in Manhattan. Manhattan,
wow.
Yeah, in the projects. And so all those add up to things, even including experiences going on now in terms of schooling of young children and healthcare and so on. Okay. But then the question is, how on earth did I wind up here on a city council as a so-called politician? And that was at the request of some people that we were interested in universal health care for all people as a human right. And someone said, well, why don't you run for office if you believe these things? So I, for better or worse, said okay, and did, and got elected twice and all that.
Okay, wonderful. So explain to our viewers, what is the Working Families Party?
Fine question. Well, the name itself, Working Families, is to include, let's say, people of who have to live everyday life, working for a living, not just wealthy people, maybe individuals, families, employed or unemployed. And it's a party which exists in several states and tries to work with other parties when that's possible. If you have a candidate in another party that you think is really terrific, if it be he or she a Democrat, Republican possibly, communist, who knows, if that person is showing some real innovation and struggle on behalf of people, then Working Families may unite with that person rather than run their own candidate, which they will do if there's nobody else who is dedicated to the people's needs.
That's interesting, because as a Democrat, it's amazing that I find, and I attend my share of city council meetings. Sometimes I can't tell the Working Families Party, right, as opposed to the Democrats on city council. And it appears to me, and I could be wrong, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the Working Families Party get a lot of Democratic votes.
Oh,
is
yes.
That true?
And vice versa.
Okay.
Again, it's a matter of decision, where you put priorities and who you ally with. And if you think of a person is really doing good work on behalf of the people, and I personally endorse some old slogans, power to the people and so on, and no matter what political party it is, if they really stand up and struggle to make people's lives better and give them power and influence, then you have to be flexible. Otherwise, you're off in a corner somewhere without any support. And most of all, you have to listen to people and go along, even if you disagree to some extent, if that's the need in the community. I know those are a lot of words, and practically speaking, as you say, sometimes it's hard to tell where a person stands, what they have done, what they mean, what they're committed to, and so on. We hope that we make a difference, obviously, otherwise why spend our time?
Okay. So now I want to get into some specific questions.
Yes, good.
So how can a council member, how does being on city council benefit the average Hartford resident? what's the benefit of electing city council members?
Well, we feel that we must have people with an ordinary background and experience, not just lawyers and so-called politicians and executives, in order to represent people's needs, and they can speak for themselves on a city council. They should not be worried that they don't know as much as so-and-so, they don't know all these laws and so on. They must speak up, not just in community organizations. One slogan I have is we need people inside the government and we need people outside demonstrating, if need be, that their needs are not being met. So that there's a togetherness between the politicians and the people's needs. It could be workers or unemployed, families, and so on. And also the interest goes beyond just people live in the city. I mean, we're all human beings, whether we're religious or not religious, men or women, whatever background. Well, here, I shouldn't go on too much, but I think we need to represent everyone. And I came with this little thing, if you don't mind, if the producers don't mind. This is just a little note that I wrote of the United Nations, which has written what I wrote, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948. We feel that needs to be applied as a document or through our churches and any organization to defend all people. And what we just passed recently, 2 days ago, is a resolution not to send the children at the border back to their countries where they faced such hard conditions that they were fleeing violence and hunger and so on. We think that's relevant right here in Hartford as well as down at the Texas border. Because they're our people. Well, they're our people, and some of them may have relatives. Okay. We know that there are some children coming to the border that may have relatives right here in Hartford, from Guatemala, Nicaragua, and so on. And we have to look out for them. That's my feeling. You can tell it's a matter of real passion. You asked what put me on city council, and some of it is to work on behalf of people, not just in the North End or Parkville or Hartford, but all around.
Of course. Because
these are people suffering. What else can you say?
Well, I remember when I first got involved in civic engagement. Around the time I was taking a lot of leadership classes, and I actually started the first institution that I went to. I used to go over to the state capitol, to the legislative office buildings. And then when I started going over to City Hall to be able to witness some of the city council meetings, you were the council member that stood out for me, that really stood out for me. I'm listening to all of the dialogue that was going on at that time, and I remember specifically you took the floor, and everybody on council was mad at you because you were saying that there was some process that was going on at that time where they were not being transparent about the monies that were being allocated, and why wouldn't it be done in a public forum? And I remember Ken Kennedy trying to shut you up in a polite way, but saying this isn't the time for that. But and I'm a big proponent of transparency. So sitting there at City Hall for the first time, and you want to know my honest feelings about that experience, it was the only white man on the council is advocating for my needs.
Well,
and that stuck out for me. So I just want to thank you for that today, because I never got to tell you that. And because of your passion about making sure that everything was done fairly and across the board for impoverished people, it just, really spoke volumes for me. So with that being said, I've seen some of your passion in that. I hear some of your passion here. And you talked about health, your doctor, that's a passion of yours. So what are you most passionate about?
Well,
if somebody came up with an issue that was going on today, what would send you right to your desk to write the president?
What you just brought out is there must be justice. There must be fairness. There must be, you don't say equality, but there must be justice for people. It doesn't just mean civil rights and political rights. It means economic, the ability to earn a living and to have a position. Since you bring these things up, one of my models, of course, is Rosa Luxemburg. Rosa Parks. Jeez.
Who's Luxembourg?
Well, she was an old revolutionary. That's another question. Yeah, Rosa's a good name, but everyone knows Rosa Parks down south, and she stood up and didn't stand up, and she got busted because she didn't want to comply with that nasty legal system. Any of us can do that, and in certain circumstances, I think we would. I mean, I have in a modest way, but not like she. But it's a matter of saying what's right and what's wrong, and then acting on it. And again, if people are outside the political system or inside it, let them be heard and let them be forceful. And if something's not right, they have to decide to join with other people and to make it happen. So there's a lot to say about insisting on the truth, justice for all people, and it goes from young to old. You know, all national backgrounds. As we said, it happens that Connecticut and the United States are wealthy. However, look at the disparities. Connecticut and the U.S. have the largest disparities between rich and poor in the whole world, just about, which is not justice. And so you can tell it's a matter of passion. Doesn't matter who you are, really, just to speak up that way. It's hard to say, but everyone gets the meaning, I think.
Of course. So how long have you been in Hartford?
About 35 years or so,
Okay.
in and out, and going to school at certain times. I went to Boston for a year to get Master of Public Health, which is one way where you join a particular skill like medicine with a public health or public concern, and that's one being on a city council or something else. You join the things you know with a certain way to act and to also represent other people if it's worthwhile.
Right.
And some people think it's not even worthwhile. Why bother with these politicians? Well, you can say that you push them. You push the politicians as far as you can. You demand things because they do control some money. And the lawyers and the fancy wealthy people that work downtown, we sometimes get along with them and sometimes don't. It's up to the people that we can't do anything without everyone watching this and everyone in the city and the country and everyone making their needs known and demanding them, not just saying, well, could you do this and could you do that? That's our history. And again, that's why I cited Rosa Parks. She was sick and tired of taking the old way of doing things, and she moved everyone, all of us.
Okay, so City Council have their meetings at City Hall.
Yes.
And City Hall is where our mayor does his work. And you've been on City Council. You said this is your second term on
right.
City Council. So that means that you actually were on City Council when Segarra, our now President Mayor Segarra, was on City Council also.
That's right. Yes.
Okay. So now let me get a little mischievous.
Go ahead. Good for
So
you.
how was your working relationship with Segarra on City Council, and how important is it for City Council members to have or not have a relationship with their mayor? Because the mayor is the person that's over City Council, right? Or how does that work? I'm sorry, that isn't the correct terminology I meant. The mayor is here, City Council is here, and City Council is the mechanism that holds the mayor accountable or any of his decisions. So explain that to us. I'm not sure.
Okay, I see it a little differently.
Okay.
You see, you first start off with things that most people know about: the U.S. Congress and the state government. You have an executive who's the president of the United States or the governor of Connecticut, and then you have a legislature. They're supposed to be equal, not one above the other.
Okay.
One of them is supposed to make proposals and do management, and the other is supposed to approve and set policy. That's where the trick comes in, because if the mayor or anyone treats city council as just secondary down underneath, which sometimes happens. I do have that criticism.
That's, most people would actually think that, because sometimes I hear people saying, Evelyn, call the mayor or get in touch with the mayor, and there's never really a consideration for, let's go and contact city council.
Because sometimes it seems weak, and sometimes it is weak and disorganized, whereas when you have a chief executive, you can have him or her and policy and their staff make certain positions, and then, like you see in Congress now, People are disorganized and they're split, even within parties. So it's not as identifiable. But I would say before we have a break, the viewers and listeners need to call each and every one of the people on City Council and push them, rather than not bother, you see, because sometimes it makes a difference, not always. But you don't just come to us, me or Working Families, but everyone, and say, look, will you do this? We need this. We must have that. Don't let them get off the hook. Don't let us otherwise we don't deserve to be there. And when people say they should all be replaced, they might be right.
Thank you for that comment. We'll get back to some more questions on City Council in 1 minute. Thank you for joining For the Greater Good with Evelyn R. Richardson and our special guest, Dr. Larry Deutsch. We'll be right back in 1 minute. Thank you for watching accesstv.org. Don't leave your seat.
At Hartford Public Schools, we care about one thing above all, the future of our kids. That's why we're dedicated to providing all students with the knowledge and skills needed in the new global culture. Hartford Public Schools is thriving. More student success stories, more world-class facilities, more university and corporate partnerships, more amazing talent coming and staying in Hartford. This is how education is supposed to work. Welcome to Hartford Public Schools, where the future is present.
Welcome back. Thank you for joining us on For the Greater Good with Evelyn Richardson with my special guest, Dr. Larry Deutsch, City Council person for the Working Families Party. So I'm going to go on. I have few more questions here for you. So this is really the baseball field. The Rock Cats are planning to come to Hartford, and there's been a lot of dialogue going on, and I'm just going to put you out there on Front Street because I know I've had several conversations with you and heard some of your concerns around that. So am I right when I say that you're really opposed to it at the end of the day, or is there certain reasons why you might be opposed to it instead of being in favor of it? Would you like to be in favor of it is basically what I'm asking. And if you wouldn't like to be in favor of it, what is the other where you would like to see that land go or utilized?
Well, first of all, I'm glad you mentioned it that way, because we want to be positive. We want to affirm that the people need things to do, and also they need work, jobs. The first thing for us is Hartford has a high unemployment rate and empty space, and this cannot continue. Wasted space and people without jobs and not being able to make a living. Right. So we want to be positive and say if we looked for the most beneficial project for the city of Hartford, it would be some homes, buildings, industries, and work opportunities that would last all year round, that would teach skills development, not just low-wage jobs that come and go and so on. And the stadium probably is not the best way to do that, in all truth. Okay. It's not that we don't like baseball, and we don't want to have something nice and close for people to go to and inexpensive. All this stuff must be in writing before we even think about allowing a stadium, and so far they have not put this in writing. That means a true guarantee. If they leave early, will they pay up everything the city has invested? Will they guarantee jobs that are not just low wage and temporary, and things that are selling this and that don't bring people to be able to make a good living? Mm-hmm. The way it should be all around the world, let alone right here in Hartford. There's also the other question. The people in New Britain, they built that stadium, and now the Rock Cats owners want to just take it away, leave it empty after their lease is up, and we don't want to do that necessarily, especially now that there's a busway. But most of all for Hartford, we don't want to seem negative, and we do feel all of us need to come up with better opportunities. And I can think of lots of them in terms of work for people, whether it be in light manufacturing, making anything, Assembling medical devices is one idea. Learning, affiliation with Capital Community College, right, a few steps away. St. Joseph. There are a lot of things in downtown, and also a need for housing. Most of those would provide more employment for our city residents if we insisted that it hire city residents. That means also minorities and women, and not just get out-of-town companies. There are probably better ways to do it than building a baseball stadium here, where we also have Dillon Stadium. We have our good parks that need to be maintained and fixed. We have the Excel Center, all these things. So we don't want to be opposed, but rather we want to affirm there are better ways to do it. Now, the thing that has enraged all of us is that the owners and the mayor wanted the taxpayers to build this thing, $60 million or 40, whatever it is, instead of saying, well, you build it yourself, then you complain.
But they recently agreed to actually build it themselves.
Yeah. Well, they backed off. It's because the people spoke up and they said, well, we might like baseball. Be darned if we, the taxpayers, can afford more taxes when there's blighted housing in the city. We need more teachers with smaller classroom sizes. There are all kinds of community needs that are away from the downtown, the neighborhoods. We've talked about it, whether it be in the North End, Parkville, the South End. There's lots to be fixed up, and many people have told us that's first for them, more than a baseball stadium. So,
what's that saying that my grandmother used to say? And maybe you can help me out with it, because you're a couple of years older than me. A bird in the hand is worth more than, what is it?
It's worth two in the bush.
Right. And that for me kind of fits with the baseball field, because what you're talking about better options for that space, but where are they?
Well, that's a good question. So basically now you're talking about money and power that needs to come together in order to put up some of these new, let's say, construction, whether it be housing or manufacturing. And that's why, to some extent, this idea of a public-private partnership is okay if the public has control and there's fairness in doing it, rather than have the private interests, which is to us.
The public has control in what manner? What are you saying?
Well, because sometimes you have private interests that pull the strings behind the scenes. And you asked before about political power and so on. I think everyone knows that sometimes there's some politicians who will give in to pressure or take bribes or do things over the table or under the table. But nevertheless, if money is so powerful, if you have a development in a city, it may be that the development benefits the developers.
So who's being corrupt right now? Who's taking bribes?
Well, you can't say that. We have to see. The public needs to be aware, to be on their toes, and if they want more information, they should push us, who are in political positions, to do what we can. And sometimes we don't get the information either.
Right.
This is a big quarrel. Transparency. Some politicians are in the inner circle and some are in the outer, especially minority parties and so on. They're not always invited to the table, and the table is sometimes the big corporations with some politicians, and they know each other, and they make deals. This is no secret, and the public needs to be wary of all that, whether it be here in Hartford, the state capital, or Washington, D.C.
Okay. So you say you're a doctor, and health is a big area for you. What about the grocery store? I haven't heard you say. I've heard you talk about factories. Right. I heard you talk about other economic development opportunities to put people to work. But there's another Hartford Community Loan Fund has this grocery store that they even. For downtown North, they had it on the City of Hartford's website that it was the catalyst for that land was going to be the grocery store, and now it appears that after all of this, maybe a year or two of planning for that, the mayor has taken it and made the catalyst for the baseball field.
That's right.
And to the disappointment of many people that expected for a grocery store to be there. But I don't hear you advocating for that.
Oh, you haven't heard it just because there's not enough time to advocate for it.
Okay.
What I did is I advocated, first of all, for justice and human rights in a general way. Second, for jobs for all the people so they can make a decent living. Third, of course, they need healthy conditions. They need access to good good food, and they need to be vigilant if someone puts that as a secondary priority. And so now, because of people have come forward, the administration, the mayor, and the others have said, okay, we'll try to do both. We'll try to have the stadium and the source of good food and jobs for our people and a good place to live. But we need, as they say, the other slogan is the devil is in the details. And if they make those kind of second fiddle, then people say, well, maybe the market won't fit in, or maybe the jobs, they'll have lower wages, but at least it's more than there is, or we'll fill up those empty parking spaces. Something is better than nothing. But the people need to make their needs known and need to make demands, and together decide what's enough and what is just giving them crumbs off the table. And that's where they need to keep the politicians on their toes and say, look, they're throwing something at us, but it's distorted. It's not enough. It's just a trick. And people with common sense need to know that, and then force the lawyers independently and the politicians to do it, or else no approval, no re-election, no approval of city council. They should go to a referendum, which we have called for a referendum so that people can vote. We call that power to the people. But some of us think, well, maybe they'll try not to have a referendum by having some other privatization or something, and that gets around the public needs. So again, I know I'm saying a lot, but people need to be on their toes if it's really a democracy that serves the people. That's another good term, serve the people, which goes back to the 60s and 70s, but it's still a good one. Our job is to serve the people, not private interests.
Right. So I found out today that the public comment meeting for city council will not be on the 21st.
Right.
That the resolution won't go before council at that time, so that's off the table for now. And the next meeting, if I'm not mistaken, you said will be August 11th will be the next city council meeting, where you can come in, where it will possibly be on the resolution. The mayor have placed it on resolution.
Well, here, let me just jump in and say this. Because of popular pressure, all the people, they have put it out to what's called a request for proposals, and the stuff is supposed to be due August 1st. Sometimes they will justify keeping it secret until the last minute because they say it's a business deal, and you can't put it out before the public, and then you just give the best option, what they think is the best option, and then we have to pick and choose and then go through a whole process. Well, people should insist on full access to all that stuff so that they know what else has come in. They can say, well, this one's good, that one isn't, instead of just giving it all written down, all these papers, and say, well, this is what we want. And then things get drawn out and you have arguments and so on. If you open and have confidence in all the people, their ability to think and to read and have morals and so on, then you have no reason not to show them all the documents and say, look, give us your opinion now, and then we'll put it up, and then we'll have a popular vote. It's just democracy. That's all it is, and and justice. Well,
so when you're at the meetings, the past couple of meetings that did take place, one at City Council and then the other one at the Hartford Public Library, right, where there was about, I believe that Hartford 2000 said it was about maybe 350 people in attendance at that meeting, and a lot of people did get up and say that they would like to have, these are your constituents, saying that they would like to have the baseball field there. Of course, there were some that in opposition, but when you hear people saying that they wanted to come and they could care, some of them could even care less if we paid for it, right, and then others said, okay, if there's going to be a tax increase, we don't want it. If there's going to be, if we have to put in 40 through 60 million dollars, then we don't want it. But what do you say when you say, okay, well, there was 20 people that said we would like to see this baseball field come, and there was 5 that said, no, we don't want it? does that change your thinking and say, well, maybe this might be a good idea, or do you still strongly believe that it's something that needs to still be considered as possibly not the best fit for Hartford? Because sometimes even when you're right, you stand alone.
Right. That's right. Absolutely. You have to consider that. I mean, you must, especially when you're a public official. But there are other times you still have to stand up for what you think and believe, even if it's a minority position. Everyone knows that. But there are many good, fine, working people and prominent people in the city that think that this function of the stadium is not just for baseball, but to build the city in the eyes of others, whether it be people live in other cities and they'll come here, or they'll live in the city because they can walk to a ball game in the evening and so on. So we know there are good reasons, but some people think, most people don't think it's the best use of the space and the money, even though it has some benefits. The thing is to build the whole city, and when they say build downtown North, the stadium downtown North, they have to consider the whole city, all the neighborhoods, even to the furthest reaches, up by Keeney Park and down by Goodwin Park and all to the west. It's the whole city we're interested in, and if they're going to get benefits and permission and tax breaks and all that stuff, they have to step up to the plate, not just for downtown, where maybe some wealthier people, or who knows, younger or older people will move into downtown. It has to be affordable. There have to be conditions set that are approved of in advance and open, written down, guaranteed, and not just promises that this
How
will
logical is that, though?
It's a struggle.
Honestly, okay, we want to say, I'm a developer. I want to develop this parcel of land. I have a wonderful idea, but the whole city of Hartford believes that because I want to develop this parcel of land, that I have to give accountability for why 2 million feet of land hasn't been developed. African American families, we have this word that we use for years, and it's called bald-headed, for the people who had shorter hair, and not a good terminology for people. Some have longer, some have shorter, but that's how that area looks right now.
Right.
It's barren. It's like a no man's land. And would it not be to the benefit of all of the city of Hartford for it to be developed and to take that one bird in the hand at this time?
Yeah. I don't know, but you see, there are some people got up at the last public meetings. I remember a man who got up, lived in a neighborhood, and he said, "Well, what's in it for us?" And I don't think that was selfish, because he could have just as well said, "What's in it for our people? What's in it, for the single mother, the unemployed 22-year-old, someone who had been in prison and now is out and needs a job." It's a legitimate question for people to say, "What's in it for us or for me?" instead of making the assumption that if it's good for downtown, they will get the benefit. And the reason they're asking these questions is because so many bad experiences in the past.
Of course.
This happens in many cities. You have one part of a city where wealthy people and big industries and so on move in, and the rest of the city winds up paying for it. They don't benefit. We will not stand for that. I'd say that personally. If that happens and people tell us don't do it because it's not healthy for the city, it's not good for our jobs, it won't guarantee employment, we won't do it.
Okay. Thank you so much. Our time is up. I would like to thank you for coming on the show and sharing with our viewers.
Well, I'd like to thank you. It's an honor and a pleasure.
Always an honor, and I really value and appreciate your insights and your wisdom. Thank you for joining us here on accesstv.org. Check us out next week again at the same time, and we look forward to having you. Have a blessed day.